First of all, thanks for the invitation at this important symposium. It's about two things: open science and animal research, and it is, of course, very interesting to philosophize about how open science can help the transition to working with fewer animals in the near future. I was asked to highlight the role of ZonMw as a research funder. I'm going to say ZonMw in Dutch because ZonMw is that sounds very complicated. So ZonMw, and I am, as you said, the chair of ZonMw, the Netherlands Organization for Health Research and Development. ZonMw is the medical funder in the Netherlands, and we work together very closely with NWO, which is the general science funder. Okay, so I'm also a neuroscientist, as you said, and I'm chairing a department in the Amsterdam University Medical Center location VUMC, where we work with all sorts of neuroscientists. Some do imaging, some do clinical neuroscience, some do animal work. And with one of my animal researchers, I've been working on a statement that is on our website, if all is well by now, and which says how we aim to work towards using fewer animals in the future. And this was an interesting let's say, an interesting path that we took together, because my colleague was not convinced that in neuroscience we can do with fewer animals. And after we spoke about a lot of things, including open science principles, we were actually able to make a transitory movement. So I'll come back to that a little later. So let me divide my talk into two subcategories, so sub-questions. And the first question could be, what is the role of ZonMw as a research funder in realizing open science? And also, as Frank already mentioned, the broader movement of recognition and rewards. Okay, so ZonMw as a funder has a clear mission to stimulate health research and innovation of healthcare. And we also aim to create conditions to strengthen knowledge sharing and increase the impact of research to, of course, contribute to a robust scientific system. Now, that means that we implement open science in every program, and that we focus on open science, but also verification. I'll come back to that later if it's not familiar. On recognition and rewards, and also more recently on citizen science. As for the different international agendas that are out there, ZonMw's policy on open science is inspired by mostly Coalition S and Plan S, to which we contribute readily. But also the FAIR data agenda. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And it's a way of organizing your data such that they can be easily accessed across nations and also between institutes within our own country. I'll also come back to that. And then, as Frank has also already mentioned, the DORA Declaration, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, which has played a very important role in the recognition and rewards program that is being developed in all sorts of countries in Europe. European Committee is working with recognition and rewards now. In the States, in Asia, all sorts of countries throughout the world. Now, maybe good to say something about how ZonMw facilitates open access. So after publication, we require a direct open access. So there cannot be an embargo period on work that has been subsidized by ZonMw. We ask that the copyright remains with the researcher, and we prefer a so-called Creative Commons BY license, which means that the publications and also figures from publications can be used in your own publication without having to ask for permission from the journal. You only have to mention the first author in sharing figures or other parts of publications. So from 2021, all publications that were subsidized by ZonMw need to be available open and freely, accessible for science and also society in general. So there are, of course, as you know, multiple routes, gold, green, hybrid, diamond, but the choice is up to the researcher which one of these routes he or she chooses. We do provide small stimulus money for the gold route because obviously gold is better than green, but we understand that it costs money, and 5,000 euros per project is probably not sufficient for a project to publish everything according to the gold route. So it's a bit of a help, but not enough. And we understand if people decide to go for the green route instead. Okay, so let me continue to the next slide. How does ZonMw facilitate open access? Oh, sorry, this is the, yeah, so as I said, oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, my program doesn't do what I want it to do. Yeah, so the gold route is preferred, obviously, but if that isn't possible, then a green route is also fine. And one of the projects that we've been investing in at ZonMw is the European PubMed Central database, which is an archive of publications and also related output that you can simply load up your work into. And if you do that, then ZonMw considers this to be fulfilling the green route open access criterion. So self-deposit in EPMC is sufficient for us. All right, let's go to the next slide. And again, something doesn't work yet. Now it does. So let's go to verification. Findable, accessible, introducible, and interoperable and reusable, as I said. We do set requirements for grant proposals to make data fair as much as possible. We require a data management plan with support of a data expert at the Institute. We also have community specific requirements. So, for example, in the COVID period, where specific grants were given by ZonMw, a data steward had to be involved in the application of funding. And COVID-specific standards had to be used, and also, so for example, the WHO electronic case report form, known to some of you, I guess, and data had also to be stored in a specific COVID database. Data from funded projects have to be stored in online repositories and so in line with FAIR principles and as much as possible. And of course, we acknowledge that fields differ in how advanced they are with respect to FAIR data practice. The interesting thing here, so I'm remembering a meeting that I had with the heroes, it's a strange name, but the heads of international research organizations. So let's say the international ZonMw's all together. They meet twice a year approximately. And in the COVID period, we were discussing the fact that genetic information about the coronavirus was not sufficiently accessible for different countries. So for example, the Global South always has more difficult access to databases that require money for data to be extracted. Now, if we want to be able to work together globally to share data, to share knowledge about genetic codes of the virus, then we need databases that are freely accessible, that can be accessed from all different sorts of countries with all different levels of expertise and also of let's say proficiency in terms of working with databases. We need data to be stored such that every country can work with those data, and also that all these countries can upload data in that same format. So we need fair data, but we also need, for example, tags onto those data that make them machine findable, machine readable. So we can process large amounts of data. So that's subject of a very active international discussion, and also it's very disappointing how little has been done internationally to work along these principles, these fair principles and these machine findable principles. So you can really see that in an acute situation such as a pandemic, that this doesn't work sufficiently. All right, so let me just continue. We need to stimulate the building of a community. That is something that we realize very much at ZonMw. You can ask for people to make their data fair, for example, or open access with every individual grant, but you also want to build a community where people inspire each other. You also want to create a community of data stewards, for example, who make data fair and findable, such that researchers don't have to do too much of this, because researchers normally really don't have the affinity or don't have the knowledge. We don't want them to focus on anything else but very good science. But we want to support them with data stewards and with networks and research infrastructures that support them. So, for example, there is a local digital competence center initiative by NWO, where this expertise is being shared, and where data stewards work with researchers to come up with new ideas of how to store data. DORA has already been mentioned a couple of times. So ZonMw signed it in 2019 together with NWO, and we are therefore committing ourselves to the new approach of recognition and rewards. And as Frank already told us, recognition and rewards is by now an international movement. In Holland, we have a steering group that supervises all the recognition and rewards implementation programs in the universities and university medical centers. So basically, it started by saying we don't want H indexes anymore, and we don't want to speak about impact factors too much anymore, and we don't want to conclude that people are excellent because they were cited very much. They can be so, for example, citations and impact factors, they can be metrics that say something about the quality of the researcher and of the research, but they needn't necessarily say anything about the quality. And we need a more elaborative narrative to tell people or to assess people based on their merits. For their merits, I should say. So we need a broader set of criteria in the assessment of researchers. One of the things in recognition and rewards is that we want to have a more diverse career path. So, for example, if you're a researcher but you want to go into leadership for a while, then you should be able to do that, and also be able to return to research after that period of doing management or any of the other leadership opportunities. Also, if you are very much into education, very much into research first, and then you want to go into education for a few years, you need to be able to go back to research. And therefore, ZonMw and NWO have to ask for example, your best 5 or 10 publications over your career instead of your total number of publications, because then it becomes apparent that you've stepped out of research for 5 years, let's say, and people are going to be focusing on that too much. So it is of importance that you combine research and education and leadership and patient care, but you don't have to do everything always at the same time. So there needs to be a bit of a vitalizing movement in career paths. Also, we want to, as part of recognition and reward, we want some more balance between what individuals do and what teams do. So team science is one of those hashtags that are becoming very popular. We are interested in how teams function and how we can promote teams. And also, as I said, stimulating academic leadership is one of the pillars of recognition and rewards. But an important point is open science. And within the recognition and rewards program, one of the major issues is focusing on quality instead of quantity. And one of the quality points is whether and how you contribute to open science practices. So, for example, we can ask you in the narrative CV that is now common at the funders, we can ask you about your key research output, not the number of publications, but the best publication and why you think these are the best publications, but also about your education activities, patient care, and also specifically about open science practices. So, as Frank said, it would be great within a thesis, for example, a PhD thesis, that there will also be a chapter on how the PhD student worked to make his or her data more accessible or more open. That would actually be, in my dreams future, one of the things that we would value more instead of only published work. Now, so as you'll remember, we talked about 2 questions. So one question is, how does ZonMw stimulate open access? I hope I've been able to tell you a bit about our background, that we see open access as an important implementation step of a more general recognition and rewards program. And then there's a more specific question that is important for the symposium today. And that is, how does open science contribute to the quality and relevance of animal research specifically? So let's go into that a bit more. Open science and the relation to animal research is, of course, the relation between these two subjects is apparent, I think, because open science can help the transparency and also the sharing of data. So, for example, we can be more transparent about our methods and protocols, about the experimental animals that we use, the setup of our experiments, statistical methods, and we can, and also the negative or neutral data that should be much more often should be published. So we would actually want to stimulate the use of open science to discuss the setup of animal experiments a bit more, or a lot more, before the actual experiments are going to be undertaken, and see if there is, for example, already data online. For example, somebody has already tried what you want to try in your animal experimentation, and they have shown negative results. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's one negative study, it is automatically the case that there cannot be a positive result. I mean, with a little bit of tweaking of the experiment, there can be different results, but at least we need to know that there already have been negative data using the exact same animals and a similar setup of the experiment. So methods to increase transparency and quality. Let me just see where my notes are. Sorry, let me just see where I am. Yeah, 13. Okay, so more specifically, there are several ways to increase transparency and reproducibility of animal research. So as I said, oh, can you still see me?
Yes, everything's fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Pre-registration, as I said, of protocols in online registers that they're going to be talked about more later, as I've understood, but also applying ARRIVE guidelines, which is a checklist for describing animal research in publications for maximum quality and reliability. And also prepare guidelines, which is a different set of guidelines in a different phase of your study for in the setting up and preparation of animal studies. You can look at the prepare guidelines. You can work on systematic reviews. I don't think that many animal researchers are investing a lot of energy into systematic reviews of why certain animal models have been used and whether or not these animal models are sufficiently adequate for the questions that are being asked. For example, if I look at my own field, neuroscience, there is a lot of animal experimentation going on, but relatively few researchers that I know are actually asking themselves, is the question that I'm interested in, the clinical question, is that in its basic form transferable to an animal model? So for example, addiction or a complex neurological disease, is that sufficiently modelable? just to use a strange word, is it possible to model that sufficiently in an animal model? And I would say that in many cases that is not the case. And of course, fair data.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeroen. There's a disturbing sound. Is there something on your microphone, or I'm not sure whether it's coming from your side or somewhere else?
There's nothing happening on this side except me speaking. Is it still there?
Now it's gone. Maybe there was some paper on the microphone or something, your notes, or I'm not sure. Please go on.
That could be
it's
the
okay
case.
now.
All right. So we spoke about DORA already. What are the implications of having signed DORA for animal research? Well, ZonMw committed itself to use that broader set of criteria that is advocated in DORA. And so we work with a narrative CV, and if you would translate that narrative CV to those people applying for animal research at ZonMw, you could, for example, ask more actively for have you been sharing or reusing data, also negative and neutral data. Have you been working on a database that is available for a wider community of animal researchers? Have you been promoting transparency, for example, through education or through writing reviews? Or so to all these good practices, have you been contributing to these? We could ask that and make it part of the evaluation, and in that sense, it's going to determine whether or not you will receive a grant for animal experimentation. So, promoting transparency in animal research, open access, fair data. We've been talking about this a lot. Should be at the core of animal research, and should be much more at the forefront of animal research in the Netherlands and also internationally. We do have a program at ZonMw which is called More Knowledge with Fewer Animals, which gives small grants for publishing negative neutral data, and also helps training and execution of systematic review. So what does a systematic review need? We help from ZonMw. We help, but also we bring together scientists to inspire each other on this topic. And of course, we're working on this pre-registration, which is in a pilot phase. And we're asking people to pre-register and see if pre-registration really leads to better and more transparent animal research. Open science is a work in progress, and I'm going to finish up. The international discussion is in full-fledged. So ZonMw is not finished in terms of its policy on open access, but we do see but we have implemented a lot, and we're discussing constantly with our applicants and our committees and our reviewers what could be improved. And also today, I would very much be interested in your ideas of how we could further improve our open access principles, and how specifically we can use open science principles to improve animal research and to reduce the number of animals that we're using currently, because that's very much something that ZonMw stands for, to try and reduce the number of animals that are being used in medical research. So let's discuss a number of the questions. Some of them are listed here on the slide. So which exact open science criteria should researchers use, and should they be assessed on? How career paths can be colored to work with the new reward and recognition criteria, and also to implement open science practices. So I think we're doing a lot already, and you have to be very open and transparent if you want to receive a grant from ZonMw. But there are several ways to further increase quality, reproducibility, and especially transparency in many different programs, but specifically in animal experimentation. So I value your input and your feedback, and I hope that I've been able to show how ZonMw is trying to spearhead a number of these open science practices. Thank you.